Jaya Radha Madhavam Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Chandra Balaba Girivaradhari Gopi Chandra Balaba Girivaradhari Yashoda Nandana Prajatana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Prajatana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Kira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Bhalava Girivaradhari Yashoda Nandana Prajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Srila Prabhupada ki jai. This type of Boga offering is getting out to. Okay. So today for Srimad-bhagavatam, 9th Canto, Chapter 13, verses 4 and 5. Chapter is called The Dynasty of Maharaja Nimi. So we'll chant the Sanskrit for verse 4. Shisha Gati Kramam Viksha Nirvartya Gato Guru Ashapat Patatat Deho Nime Pandita Vaninaha Shishavyati Kramanga Viksha Tam Nirvartya Gato Guru Ashapat Patatag Deho Nime Pandita Vaninaha Shishavyati Kramam Viksha Tam Nirvartya Gato Guru Ashapat Patatag Deho Nime Pandita Vaninaha Shishavyati Kramam Viksha Tam Nirvartya Gato Guru Ashapat Patata Deho Nime Pandita Vaninaha Shishavyati Kramam Viksha Tam Nirvartya Gato Guru Ashapat Patata Deho Nime Pandita Vaninaha Shishavyati Kramam Viksha Tam Nirvartya Gato Guru Ashapat Patata Deho Nime Pandita Vaninaha Shishavyati Kramam Viksha Tam Nirvartya Gato Guru Ashapat Patata Deho Nime Pandita Vaninaha Shishavyati Kramam Viksha Guru Patata Deho Nime Pandita Vaninaha. Word for word synonyms. Shishavyati Kramam. The disciple's deviation from the order of the Guru. Viksha, observing. Tam, the performance of yajna by Indra, Nirvartya, having finishing, Agataha, when he returned, Guru, Vashishta Muni, Ashtapat, he cursed Nimi Maharaj. Atata, may it fall down. Deha, the material body. Nimi, of Maharaj Nimi. Panditamaninaha, who considers himself so learned as to disobey the order of the spiritual master. Translation. After completing the sacrificial performance for King Indra, the spiritual master Vashishta returned and found that his disciple Maharaj Nimi had disobeyed his instructions. Thus Vashishta cursed him, saying, "May the material body of Nimi, who considers himself learned, immediately fall."
Тогда Васильевка проклял своего ученика. Тут же время первого Ними, возомнившего себя мудрецом, пойдет в ад.
And there's no purport in that verse. So, verse 5, for unnecessarily cursing him when he had committed no offense, Maharaj Nimi counter-cursed his spiritual master. Quote, for the sake of getting contributions from the King of Heaven, he said, you have lost your religious intelligence. Therefore I pronounce this verse, your body also will fall.
Maharaja Nimi, которого непослушно проклял его учитель, в ответ проклял его самого.
Prabhupada's purport. The religious principle for a Brahmana is that he should not be greedy at all. In this case, however, for the sake of more lucrative remuneration from the King of Heaven, Vashishta neglected Maharaj Nimi's request on this planet, and when Nimi performed the sacrifices with other priests, Vashishta unnecessarily cursed him.
Однако в данном случае Васильевка, прельстившись более щедрыми дарами царя небес, пренебрег просьбой Махараджа Ними, который жил на земле. А когда Махараджа Ними провел жертвоприношение смерти Васильевка незаслуженно проклял.
When one is infected by contaminated activities, his power, material or spiritual, reduces. Although Vashishta was the spiritual master of Maharaj Nimi, because of his greed, he became fallen. Omakana Timiranda Shakanajana Shalakaya Chakshurunitam Yata Shri Gurave Namaha. So we have a very interesting situation here. Maharaja Nimi was trying to perform a sacrifice that would be for the benefit of all the citizens of the world. And he asked his spiritual master, Shishta, to preside over the sacrifice. But Krishnamuni said, "Sorry, I can't do it here right now. I have another engagement in the planet of Lord Indra." Maharaj Nimi, he knew that for the benefit of the people in general, who would be receiving the benefit of the sacrifice, performing as the king, for their benefit, he wanted, it was important to do the sacrifice immediately. And these kind of sacrifices were everything had to be done exactly at a certain time, certain place, everything had to be exact. So the time of the sacrifice needed to be performed had to start at a certain time and a certain day, like that.
Каждое жертвоприношение, оно нуждается в том, чтобы было совершено в время, в нужном месте, нужных обстоятельствах, и это также самое нужно было провести в определенное время.
So the Maharaj Nimi, although he wanted his spiritual master to preside over it, he couldn't, or he wouldn't. Vasishtha Muni would not do it at that moment. He said he had other engagements. So Maharaj Nimi went ahead and did what he had to do to make the sacrifice take place.
И хотел, чтобы Васильевич провел и помог ему, скажем так, провести отношения, чтобы он никуда не ходил.
And Vasishtha Muni, he went on apparently to Lord Indra's to perform the sacrifice for Lord Indra.
Но Васильевич Муни, он собрался отношения к Индии.
But the problem came that although Vasishtha Muni is staying here, and he's saying, I'll come back and I'll perform your sacrifice for you after I finish with Lord Indra.
И Васильевич ему сказал, что вот такой вариант, говорит, что давай вначале проведи Индию, а потом приду к тебе и проведу тебя.
But in his mind, when Nimi Maharaj decided to go ahead and perform it anyway, rather than wait for him, he took that as a direct. He took it as a direct disobeying the order of the spiritual master. Even though it was not actually an instruction that you must wait for me, but I will come back. He's saying I will come back and do this when after I finish the sacrifice for Lord Indra. So Maharaj Nimi Maharaja Nimi actually did not commit any offense. He was simply carrying out his duty as the king.
Махарадж Ними, он как царь выполнял свои дела, иногда их не вкладывал.
Then Sri Muni came back and saw that the sacrifice had already been performed. And he took it that my disciple has disobeyed my instruction. He did not wait for me to perform the sacrifice for him.
И когда Василий вернулся от Индии, то он увидел, что это приношение закончено, и он понял, что Симха нарушил наставление Гуру, он провел приношение без своей
And his thought when he saw Maharaja Nimi, he said, "Oh yeah," he cursed him because he's saying he thinks that he's so smart that he can go against the orders of his spiritual master. So Sri Muni cursed Maharaja Nimi, and Maharaja Nimi being angry that he is being unjustly cursed. I mean, not just cursed, but I'm cursing you, my disciple. I'm cursing you to die right now, because you offended your spiritual master. That was what was happening.
Васильевского сказал, что поскольку
and of course, Maharaja Nimi was not happy that he being unjustly cursed to die because he actually did not commit any offense to his spiritual master. So he counter-cursed. You curse me, I'm going to curse you. You also must die. Your body must also fall. But in any case, the main point that Srila Prabhupada is putting in written in the purport is that if a person, a Brahmin in this case he's saying, becomes his activities become impure, then his own spiritual power becomes, material and spiritual power, in this case, spiritual power becomes reduced. So Srila Prabhupada saying that this is therefore we must, and it's applied to us. We're practicing Krishna consciousness. We're chanting our rounds, following the principles. We should be doing both of these things. But if someone is practicing Krishna consciousness, but at the same time is not really following so strictly, and is engaged in some sinful activity, then the spiritual their own spiritual potency will be reduce. It becomes less.
Вот. И тогда на самом деле происходит какие-то выполнения своих обязанностей, поддержки благословения
In fact, because of the acting in the wrong way, we gradually become more and more fallen. Srila Prabhupada explains that if one performs austerities, Krishna conscious austerity, actually performs any austerities, he can become powerful. Of course, there's gross material austerities like Hiranyakashipu, who stood on his toes for 125 years with his hands in the air, and he became very powerful. But then there was Gandhari. Gandhari is the wife of Dhritarashtra. Yes. Gandhari, because Dhritarashtra was blind, so she blindfolded herself, and that was a big austerity on her part, to voluntarily not be able to see. And Gandhari. So she became very. She'll explain that she became very powerful because of that particular austerity. So Shubha says the same thing applies to anyone who performs austerities. We become powerful in some way. Just like someone is very strict and practicing Krishna consciousness, they can develop, they become very powerful. Sometimes that power is manifested in the form of becoming an empowered creature. So Srila Prabhupada, obviously he performed many austerities, and he was already Krishna conscious anyway, but his example was he performed many austerities in terms of Krishna conscious activities, and Krishna empowered him to spread this Krishna consciousness movement all over the world. Sometimes devotees become, because they're strict Krishna consciousness, they may become very empowered to sell huge numbers of books, or Krishna conscious books, or become qualified to do something extraordinary in the service. And in the same way, someone who's maybe on the path of Krishna consciousness but starts becoming offensive to devotees, or becoming, well, I guess, at one level or another becoming offensive, then that power that they have starts getting reduced.
Тогда же в случае, что если преданные оскорбительное критикующее настроение, то вся сила, которая есть благодаря осознанности, уменьшается.
And we become, and someone becomes too offensive or too sinful, and sometimes it results in them dying or being killed. For example, in the fourth canto Srimad-bhagavatam, King Vena was there was a person named King Vena, Maharaja Vena. Maharaja Vena was a very sinful person, but he happened to be the king. So although he was very powerful, he was the king of the world, but he became so offensive and sinful that his authority was removed. Maharaja was so, just like we say, a king is traditionally called by the word Naradev. Naradev. So Naradev means like the representative of God, and it was administrative representative of God. So, of course, the Krishna conscious king says, yes, I'm representative of God, so I have to make sure that everyone is acting in a Krishna conscious way. Everyone in my kingdom needs to act in a Krishna conscious way. But Maharaja Vena, he was thinking, yes, I am Naradev. I am just like God. In fact, I am God. There's no difference between me and God. So he was ordering that all people, especially all the brahmanas who were performing sacrifices all over the world, don't give your sacrifices to the demigods or to Vishnu or like that. The fruits of all your sacrifices should go to me personally, because I'm as good as God. So for all practical purposes, he stopped. He stopped sacrifice. All sacrifice being performed and his whole kingdom was, for all practical purposes, stopped.
И он остановил все жертвоприношения, все какие-то процессы, которые были связаны с поклонением Богу.
So the result, or one result of his essentially stopping all sacrifice, was that all the good things of the world started being held back.
И результат этого отмены было в том, что
in particular, they could not grow any food. Because they could not grow food because ultimately, as a result of, Bhagavad Gita says, as a result of sacrifice, the rains come. As far as the rain comes, then all the food can grow. So they said this was not. They could not. Nobody could produce food grains, it says, and therefore, of course, people were becoming very hungry.
Поскольку такое произошло, что люди соответственно, они стали голодными, потому что процесс не получается.
So on one hand, he was a bad manager. Another side, he was hurting the people in general because everyone was starving. The whole world. Imagine, we have hungry people here and hungry people there. The whole world, people were starving because food could not be grown.
И поскольку еда перестала произрастать, так как они должны, то очень много людей у него в царстве начали голодать.
But because he was in the position of king, he was powerful in that sense. He could do this.
И занимая положение царя, он был главным делать.
But the Brahmanas, this is I think Sachin Yuga. Anyway, the Brahmanas were not going to tolerate this because they were very concerned about the welfare of everyone in the whole world. And the Brahmanas, usually in Vedic times, the king had his council of Brahmanas. And he would ask their advice about certain things, and they would give their advice, their honest advice based on religious principles. In the case of King Venu, he did not accept that kind of advice. He was, I'm in charge, and I'm not taking any advice from the Brahmanas in my kingdom. I don't need them. So ultimately, for the protection of the people in general, the Brahmanas finally tried again and again to convince King Vena to act, properly and religiously in his duty as king. After that, when he would not change, they came to him and they, by their words, their curse, they cursed him, and he died.
И поскольку царь верно нами собрались и решили, что он должен умереть.
So Prabhupada says here in the purport that if someone becomes too sinful or becomes too, his activities, his mentality becomes too contaminated, then he loses his power. So that was the case with Vena. He became very sinful and offensive and so many bad qualities, and he ultimately lost everything, including his own life. So of course we try to apply Srimad-bhagavatam to our own lives. We learn from the principles that are presented in the pages of Srimad-bhagavatam.
Что касается Srimad-bhagavatam, то принципы, которые там существуют, они можно влиять.
So if we want to become Krishna conscious, then of course we need to be very strict in chanting our Hare Krishna rounds, and very strict in following the regular principles and the other instructions of the spiritual master.
И необходимо следовать наставлениям духовной жизни.
If we do that properly, then our spiritual strength will increase more and more.
И если мы делаем это правильно, то наша духовная сила возрастает.
And even when times become difficult in our path of becoming Krishna conscious, we're still able to continue on the path because of that spiritual strength.
И поскольку иногда бывает какие-то препятствия, тем не менее, благодаря этой духовной силе мы можем двигаться дальше.
And if we become lax and say give up chanting japa or something like that, then we lose all our spiritual strength. Spiritual strength, our ability to continue on the spiritual path, spiritual strength.
Поскольку для того, чтобы продвигаться по духовному пути, то необходима духовная сила.
In fact, I know one person, I won't mention the name, not important, but one person who had Srila Prabhupada's association previously, but he gave up chanting his regular japa for a very long period of time.
Поэтому
so of course he was at one point. Srila Prabhupada was present. He asked Srila Prabhupada, why I don't have any spiritual strength. And Srila Prabhupada said, yes, of course, you're not chanting your japa for so long.
Такая ситуация была с Шрилой Прабхупадой, когда ему сказал, что мы не духовной силы там делать. А Шрила Прабхупада ответил, да, это потому что ты давно не читал, ты много уже не читал жапу.
And then the spiritual, that our spiritual intelligence becomes covered.
Поскольку духовный разум покрывается.
Because this same devotee later on was saying, oh, well, I don't chant japa because if I chant japa and my chanting is, there's still offenses. So if I chant japa, I'm committing offenses. So therefore, we're not supposed to chant any japa until we are free from offense.
И может быть такая, допустим, у кого-то отмазка, что да, мое посмотрение жапы
Of course, that doesn't really make any sense. We become free from offenses by chanting. We don't stop chanting and thinking that there's no offenses away because we're not chanting. That's the biggest offense is that we're not chanting.
На самом деле мы повторяем запах, чтобы избавиться от оскорблений. Мы совершаем больше оскорблений, если не повторяем запах, а повторяем оскорбления.
So that means that by acting in an improper way, the consciousness becomes covered, and we become completely, to the point that we can become completely convinced that we're doing something which is actually bad. We become completely convinced that this what I'm doing is for my spiritual benefit. That in reality, it's destroying our spiritual life. For example, the example I just gave. Here's someone who's decided, has concluded somehow or other that to avoid offense to chanting, I'll stop chanting.
То есть вот это вот объяснение, которое требует соблюдать, что если я перестану повторять, что это не является оскорблением.
So he's thinking like that, but actually that mentality was the destruction of that person's spiritual life, at least for some time.
И такое вот мышление, оно приводит к тому, что духовная жизнь становится.
Anyway, there's a couple of points related to this purport. Any questions? Or
we see sometimes in different stories around Shastras that same persons curse one another.
yeah.
And this is very strange, very easy to curse one another. How it is possible to from one side each person has good strength, understanding, good knowledge, and near both this his realizations he makes curse. То есть вопрос такой, очень часто в разных историях часто описывается, когда они охотно друг друга проклинают направо и налево. И как такое может быть, с одной стороны, человек знанием или духовной силой, он все понимает, и как легко направо и налево проклинает, как это может быть непонятно.
Sometimes the Lord engages these devotees in acting in certain ways so that there will be some lesson learned, that we can learn a lesson from their activities.
Ну, иногда в каких-то примерах мы сами должны учиться.
You know, just like sometimes there are really great, powered personalities in the universe that do dumb things, and those dumb things they did get written up in the Srimad-bhagavatam, so that, but then from that we learn some lessons.
На таких историях, когда происходит подобные действия со стороны каких-то могущественных духовных личностей.
For example, Lord Brahma in our universe, he um, apparently has some doubt. I'm not sure what somehow he decided he wanted to test Krishna and as a cowherd boy to see if he's actually the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So he stole all his cows and his cowherd boys like that.
Когда Господь Брахма, он для того, чтобы увидеть могущество Кришны, он брал его туда.
But of course, Lord Brahma already had realization of Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He shouldn't have had any doubt at all. Krishna already revealed himself to him.
Господа Брахмана было понимание того, что Кришна является верховной личностью Бога,
but Lord Brahma somehow or other Krishna covered him temporarily, so that he would do what he did, to steal the cows and the cowherd boys and hide them.
То есть Кришна его покрыл его, скажем так, знанием, чтобы он сделал то, что он сделал.
Of course, he only did that in his time, or Brahma's time, just for a second. He did it, and he thought, it's not a good idea. And he came back to return them.
И как только Брахма тестировал, то буквально через секунду сразу подумал о том, что это не очень хорошая была то, что он сделал, и он как бы сразу не вырубал.
But when he came back, it was actually 1 year later on Earth.
Но на Земле он вернулся.
And he was very surprised to see that all the cows and cowherd boys that he thought he had hidden somewhere else, that they were still there or back there. He couldn't understand.
Он был очень удивлен, когда увидел, что десятилетия они там были на месте и летали.
But of course, once he realized what had happened, and he returned the cows and the cowherd boys, and he offered his prayers to Lord Krishna, and many lessons came out of this pastime. Same principle, Arjuna, as an eternal associate of Krishna, he takes birth after birth, he comes with Krishna. Krishna appears in his performance pastimes, but he, because he was apparently bewildered temporarily on the battlefield, Krishna spoke the whole Bhagavad Gita, which of course is beneficial for the whole world. So these are all extraordinary. These are all special devotees. These actually are probably all pure devotees who take birth and to assist the Lord in his pastimes in different capacities. And Krishna covers them in some way so they can identify with their current identity, but ultimately it is all for Krishna's pastimes and for maybe teaching us lessons.
покрыл его знания, когда они есть.
Otherwise, they can't see the Vashishta Muni, who was a big saintly brahmana, and or Maharaj Nimi. Either one of them would become so angry that they would just cursing somebody to die. It's not. It's not normal. It's something which is meant for some higher purpose, and they're doing it. And we gradually will learn the lessons that came from this activity.
И как в российском комьюнити мы имели перед вопросами, то есть мы должны получить урок.
This is also the example of Maharaja. Apparently became attached to an animal, a deer, and ultimately took the birth like that. This is not by accident. He was a pure devotee of Krishna. How could this happen?
И так само как Махарадж, он был чистый Кришна, но он привязал к ребенку умницы, мысли, наставления.
So that way sometimes the Lord covers his devotees to act in certain ways so that we can learn some lessons from these histories that are in the Srimad-bhagavatam.
То есть, и вот на примере таких разных времен if Lord covers Vashishta Muni for our lessons class, it means that not Vashishta Muni, not King Nimi, he didn't have consequences from if not,
well, they both died.
They first learned sin.
What?
They didn't do sin. No, if Lord covers his consciousness, for they do these actions first for our teaching us.
Yeah.
It means that they didn't make a sin.
Sin. Apparently, but we'll see in the next verses what happens.
Not sin or sin.
We'll have to see in the next verses how this story plays out. I don't know myself, but Vashishta Muni is an extraordinary person, and Maharaj Nimi, of course, is a pure devotee of Krishna. So we'll have to see how their curse and counter curse play out. But ultimately, it was somehow or other it must have been directed by the Lord for some higher purpose.
Я спросил, что если Господь покрыл их сознание, что-то мы совершили, это проклятие друг друга, что это для того, чтобы мы получили этого, то получается, что они не совершили никакого греха, поскольку эти действия были отданы как урок для всех последующих поколений. Мы там
Okay.
If you want to ask the same question,
Oh. Okay, you think alike. Okay, no problem. Okay, so we end for today. Tomorrow we'll read Srila Prabhupada Nectar. So Prabhupada ki jai.